Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and we are back to another live stream of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and video game news. Let's hop in. It's funny, I had to literally program the subscribe button to work three different ways for three different instances in which I'm using OBS. Because when I start streaming, it automatically starts recording, so clicking the streaming button needs to trigger it when live streaming, but when I'm recording, I'm just recording and not streaming, so starting the recording needs to trigger it in that scene, in that instance, since OBS has these different scenes which are effectively just completely different collections of settings and setups, which is weird because you have scenes and then scene collections and profiles, and it's just like there's kind of too much going on there as far as different ways you can break things up, and it would only really make sense if you had multiple employees who are doing multiple different things and nobody wanted to change anybody else's settings. And I guess on that level that makes a ton of sense, because as somebody who for a brief time was running a soundboard, having to share that with two or three people led to two or three people constantly getting on each other's toes and changing the settings and just fighting on it. Effectively, what I eventually had to establish was just using the soundboard, which was way too big for its uses and had like a whole bunch of faders and inputs that were not being used. I effectively set up a third of all the inputs for one person, and a third of all the inputs for the next person, and a third of all the inputs for the next person. So the shared concepts, different people could do the exact same thing using different inputs. And running a soundboard, an audio soundboard, is frankly fairly subjective in the first place, just based on the physiology of your eardrums and what you want to hear. If you're younger, you're more likely to want to hear bass. If you're younger and can hear higher frequencies, you're going to want to hear more of that too. If you're deaf, you're going to want everything louder. If you're not deaf, you're going to want everything quieter. Alright, let's see. They've hit their 50 million download campaign on Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, which yay for them. There's now a new secret pack called Alba Abyss, which is telling you, I guess, which cards you would potentially craft to get the secret pack if you wanted to get deep in the well with that. And for the first time since launch, you can now get a discount on gems that potentially is different than the discount that you would get in bulk or the discount when it first launched. Like, I think there was a discount. That being said, you'd still have to be pretty crazy to spend any real world money at all on gems. Like, as long as you're doing the dailies, which is also in line with as long as you're playing the game, you are going to... There's also some issues. Let's see. The above issue is currently being fixed about this new Secret Abyss, Alba Abyss pack. And then a issue around branded expulsion and player versus player has been fixed. One is being fixed, the other it has been fixed. So you log in and you get, for the 50 million download this, and then you log in again and you get a protector, which is like the 5-headed dragon as far as a card sleeve. And that's all they're willing to give away for free for 50 million downloads. They're still particularly cheap. That being said, they can't really be that generous. The only thing this game really could do is Well, Duel in solo mode. I have 1 hour left. Do I want to do 3 games in solo mode right now? I might actually take the game up on that offer. Come to think of it. Yeah, the only thing this game could really do to be really helpful, I guess the secret pack is already open, so let's just do this. Even if there is potentially a glitch. The glitch is around if you don't get an ultra rare while opening these packs, that you would be guaranteed another ultra rare in the next 10 draw. So we might be screwing ourselves over by not doing that while we're waiting. The fact that secret packs, they're adding secret packs, but they're not really seemingly adding cards from a new expansion in a different way is weird. Because if this is like on that rolling release schedule, the next expansion from the real world card game being added to the digital card game, why not just have this purchasable as a new expansion instead of having to go through the dumb gamification mechanic of the secret packs and having that timer where you only have a certain amount of time. Maybe the timer doesn't actually exist for the secret pack. That would be nicer, but then I don't know why you'd call it a secret pack at that point. There is probably... Here's 2 ultra rares, so we didn't run into that problem. There's 2 other super rares or ultra rares. And that gives us 4 keys, potentially unlocking other secret packs. It's a weird system. Yeah, what I was trying to say though, I keep losing my train of thought. Did I even say today was Wednesday, November 30th? Is that the only thing this game could do to be really generous for like 50 million download is give us a bunch of cards. And that's the real step that Master Duel needs to take the next step on, is to just maybe it just needs to be even a 10% increase in everybody's collection of cards. But give us a bunch of really old cards, really cards that are not playable. Fun cards, but dumb cards. Since there is 10,000 cards in the 10,000 unique cards in the Yu-Gi-Oh card game. It would be better, certainly, if they added some new features too. Right. So this secret pack has 25 days left. And we got an ultra rare. So we could look here and click this. We could try to get a general idea of how many more cards we could possibly get. And it's really not a lot. In fact, it seems to me like this secret pack probably had some cards I already had. Otherwise, it just doesn't really make sense that I would have 10 copies of this card at that point. So this is just not even really a useful secret pack to be involved with. And 25 days left is way different than now 23 hours left. Let's see. This one's probably not really worth it. You'd really be pushing to get super rares and ultra rares. That being said, I potentially am at that point where opening secret packs just to get super rares and ultra rares makes the only sense, because there may not be really that much other options to spend your gold on. I worked on my Raspberry Pi DNS guest Wi-Fi project. The backup software, Borg backup, I needed to tweak it a little bit because I had some bind mount drives there, which basically means I made a shortcut in the folders to shared music, movie, and things, and then the backup was not programmed to exclude those shared movie, music, and photos and things like that. Shared media, shared entertainment media. Which, that would have been fine, it just would have wasted a lot of space to have the exact same thing. The trade-off there is now there's not really a setup to back up the shared entertainment, but as far as backups go, it sucks if you lose all your MP3s. It really, really sucks if you lose the documents that you need for school or work. And so by prioritizing, I think most people would say, hey, if you're going to run out of hard drive space doing backups, this one is a good category to buy. So we'll buy 10 packs of this. And of course, we'll inherently open up more secret packs with more ultra rares, which will open up more secret packs and just continue to go down the same path of great craziness. Yeah, I still really miss the Hearthstone card pack opening sequence. This isn't terrible, but it certainly doesn't have that Tavern Keeper going, oh, awesome, every time you get an ultra rare. You're instead just getting these sound effects, which I guess then you don't have to pay a voice actor, but it really wouldn't be that expensive to pay a voice actor to say awesome in several different languages. Or even since this is more of a Japanese focused game, just say it in Japanese. Get one of the voice actors from the Yu-Gi-Oh animes to spend a couple recording sessions saying, yes, awesome, that's amazing. Wow, that may be the first time I've ever gotten a Prism ultra rare card. Does this Prism effect look good? Not really. If anything, I am unimpressed by it. It just seems like it's a ugly visual effect. Which, speaking of putting ugly visual effects on cards, Marvel Snap has put in a third currency for unlocking cards in variants, which drastically just confuses me now that there's yet a third currency. I don't know how you get this third currency, and it seems like it's just trying to speed up or adjust for the fact that they really would like you to unlock all of the cards in Marvel Snap very early, in the first month of gameplay or so, unlike something like Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel here, where there really isn't much of a need for you to unlock all the cards and have all the cards. Like, almost every card in Marvel Snap, they're looking at those cards like each one is playable and there are no trash cards. Which, with the wide variety of the daily quests that you get in Marvel Snap, you kind of do have to play all of the cards and own all the cards. Because there are just daily quests that say play cards that have no effects, when normally there's really no reason why you would play cards with no effects. Plus, the location shifting in Marvel Snap creates a situation where when they're emphasizing one specific location, you get a slight chance of increasing your win ratio by playing specific types of cards that would synergize with that emphasized location. Alright, so now let's see if we should justify getting a second 10 packs here. You probably shouldn't be opening secret packs just because you don't have normals. let's think about it and then come back to it. Inevitably, what could happen here is that we could find that a new expansion comes out, and me wasting gems, even though I have a lot right now, will bite me in the butt when a new expansion comes out and I want to potentially buy more of that. Yeah, there's considerably less cards here, so let's open 10 of these packs. Inherently, we're still running into the problem also of I just don't have time to give for Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duels, so going and trying to craft a bunch of normal cards with the normal card crafting points still is not really on the table, even though that's really what I need to do. If anything, I'm just kind of hoping that maybe they would finally give up the idea of separate crafting points and merge them together, or create some kind of conversion rate, and then sitting on normal crafting points may let me turn 100 normal crafting points into 10 rare crafting points, or 1 super rare crafting point. Yeah, something like that. I'm still, I guess, addicted to Marvel Snap. I'm jumping all around here today. Yeah, but there really isn't anything new to Marvel Snap that would to say nice about it. It's a very shallow game that I can't imagine people are going to stick to that long. And inherently, well, I have tried to add a couple of new YouTubers who talk about video games. I'm still in this dead zone where I've gotten mad at or just drifted away and realized that I don't really respect or trust the opinion of a lot of mainstream video game journalists. So now I'm just at a point where I'm not listening to any video game talk at all. Inherently, if there was just a college quad that I could go hang at and talk to people about video games, that like a man on the street type interview thing, or just hanging out with people in general, that might give me some of that. So we didn't get any ultra rares that time, so now we need to spend another 1,000, and that's how you accidentally end up draining your gems, is that you went in expecting to spend 1,000 gems, and then you now have to spend 20,000. I mean 2,000. Let's not get crazy. For the accountability section, I'm still playing the game The Vagrant, and frankly, it just feels like, to use the phrase again, a shallow game. I'm really not into it, and the fact that the main character is in a bikini has frankly become boring and blasé. It just has no connection to the story or the game at all. It's just like, hey, the artist here, which they almost certainly wasted their budget in developing the game The Vagrant, because they've paid some artists to do some hand painting art, where that budget definitely could have been used to maybe made some more platforming, or just more rooms, more encounters happen in the game. There is a possibility that the game is a lot longer than I think it is, but I kind of feel like I'm halfway through, and it kind of feels like there's just nothing in most rooms. Unlike a Metroid game where every room has different layouts, significantly different layouts with significantly different enemies, every room in the Vagrant is often outside in a forest, and you'll walk on a flat plane from the left to the right, and maybe in the middle you will be attacked by like a wolf or something, but very often you will walk all the way through the area and there's just nothing happening there. It almost feels like the encounters are randomly generated. You get a lot of currency, but then you spend a lot of currency too, and it feels like the system, as far as upgrading your abilities with mana or purchasing items with gold, are way bigger than they really should be. The actual hack and slash combo gameplay content. Wow, I didn't even have that card. Interesting. The hack and slash combo stuff is pretty bad, and that should have been the core mechanic that they should have really focused on to make it really good. Most of the enemies, most of the bosses, at least, that you fight have counter stun lock type things that cause you to not be able to get 20-30 hit combos. So like there's a chicken in the first village that has infinite life that you can attack, and then you can get 2 or 3 chickens in the same place. I don't have this card either. Interesting. And so attacking those chickens will let you get a 200-300 combo because they have infinite life and because they don't stop you from just keep on hitting them. And the combos are incredibly slow, and the attack actions are incredibly slow. So it just doesn't quite feel right. We'll go with this, but I'm gonna inevitably at this point run into a problem where one of these secret packs that's open is going to lead to me abandoning it because I'll just not have enough gems. I'd still like to have 2,000 or 3,000 gems when it all is said and done here. So I may also just need to pull the trigger. Yeah, so I'm just playing the Vagrant, and I'm still going through it. But yeah, if anything, I think my footage of the Vagrant halfway through is going to show that even though I do kind of have to spend 1,000 words to describe a picture when talking about adult games on Steam, my emphasis is not so perverted that a game where a character is just in a bikini can keep my attention solely. That probably makes a pretty good argument too that if I was to go try and get like a bikini mod for Skyrim, or like something lewd and revealing like that, even if YouTube would allow that and consider that generally family friendly, which it probably wouldn't just because of the emphasis there of a character just 24/7 being in this modded outfit. I don't think I would really want to do that. And I think that's probably in line with a lot of gamers, even amongst the gamers who would get a lewd mod, bikini mod, or just straight up a nude mod. And like there's always a nude mod that gets released for like Final Fantasy VII and big games that tend to be able to be modded at all. The first thing people do is make a nude mod, but I think you're really talking a small minority amongst the niche of adult content fans would want to play the entirety of Final Fantasy VII Remake with the characters naked. It's also frankly better to, in my opinion, to tease it a little bit and not have just straight up nudity, no clothes at all. And that's kind of the problem with the Vagrant too, is that while it isn't nudity, it is a bikini, a two-piece bikini. It's too much. It's a hat on a hat. It's over the top. Like, with her name being the Vagrant, and halfway through the game them really addressing why they call her a Vagrant, which is probably a terrible localization, mistranslation. It would have made a lot more sense if she kind of had just like thin, torn, ill-fitting clothes. She still has plenty of cleavage, and so you could emphasize that, but the bikini itself is not enough material that you can play with to be visually unique. Let's see. Now the question is just, do we want to go any further? Or, well, at the very least we need to look. But I don't know if I really want to go any further down this, and that may just be the breaks. We have a decent amount of this one. I don't know if there are any other new secret packs, or if it's just that one new secret pack. We really don't have a decent amount of this one, Emblazoned Armor. I guess what the game is telling me, we really don't have that much of this one, is that the new secret pack is the only new secret pack that's been added since the game was released. Well, you don't have a lot of this. And so there's still just a long journey here. We have tons of that. So there's like 4 of these that potentially I would want to engage with. I guess if we look at newly added cards, they're saying none of these are newly added cards. So that might be a way of looking too, as far as what the featured cards are. You really can only care about the featured cards in these secret packs, because if you're just looking for random cards, you wouldn't open a secret pack. I don't think we've seen this one before, but maybe we have, because I've seen a lot of these cards. I think there's probably a very high amount of overlap in these secret packs also. The newly added cards might affect some things too. The secret packs could potentially change over time, and then there might be an argument towards going back and checking the secret packs a second time, even if you think you have most of them. But that's only something you would need to do if you'd already gotten most of the cards already. Right now I am in the middle of owning most of the cards, so I need to look at every single new secret pack anyways. So featured cards, newly added cards. I guess the idea here is that if it's glowing, it is newly added. Which is to say this card, this card, this card, this card, this card, this card, and this card. Which is to say that this secret pack barely is even engaging like a new expansion would, and it's just overlapping. So it does kind of feel like secret packs aren't even really worth it. So now the goal is to potentially, in the next 25 days, unless we have something else to do with gold, we also have tons of these to open, and I'll just skip opening those. We want to build up 50, 60, 6,000 gems if we can get on that and pull that off. This one resets, and it's possibly a better deal to have a normal pack that if we get a new normal pack or a selection pack, whatever it's called, that potentially gives us 8 of those unique selected cards versus only 4 in the secret packs. And then this one resets in a long time, but we can also see there is a decent amount of these cards that we don't have. Of course, pulling the trigger now and buying 10 packs of this or this would just open up more secret packs. So I have 7 days to potentially make a new decision. Buying the master pack still does not really make any sense. We can see here that they're up to 7,122 in the master pack cards, and one assumes this is all the cards in the entire game. And this isn't really the best way to try to get a general idea of just how many cards we're still missing. But as far as having at least one copy of cards, I think we are potentially at somewhere around the 2/3 point. I guess the best way to do this would be to edit a deck here. So we're at 3,874 normal crafting points, 3,782 for rares, 396 for super rares, and 170 for ultra rares. We come over here and we dismantle extra cards. You get a pathetic increase of 370 for normals, 290 for rares, 40 for super rares, and not a single one for ultra rares, which is to say we don't have any extra ultra rares even after all of that. That is not a very satisfactory way to dismantle things. Okay. If we include forbidden cards here, and then sort by number owned, then we can drag this tiny little scroll bar down and this is where we're at as far as just from this point to this point. That looks about 2/3 of the way there. If I spent a ton of time, ideally you'd want to be able to just generate this, but if I was to generate this, well, I mean, I can just straight up do it. Just generate this. You then have to click this, and then it gets added to the card, and that's just too slow of a process. So ideally what you would really want to do is make a new deck and add a bunch of cards here until you had them all crafted, and then there's a button that you can click to batch generate cards not owned there, and that speeds up the process a little bit. But you also have to be kind of picky, because crafting this normal card, while fine, or this rare card that is a normal non-effect monster, is not a high priority. You would want to instead start at this point and craft all of your effect monsters, which you're almost certainly going to play, and maybe you skip things that are forbidden because they're not going to have much of a value. There is potentially an imbalance in my mind, a misunderstanding, or lack of understanding, I guess is a better way to describe it, as far as would you be better off crafting effect monsters versus spells versus traps. At the top tier level of meta deck making, trying to play against other people and compete in PvP, I wouldn't be surprised if there actually is very little value in 99% of all traps and spells, because everybody plays the same spells and traps. Pot of Greed is forbidden, certainly, but there are other pots, and once a new pot or card draw a spell comes out that's better than the previous best card draw card, everybody kind of abandons the previous versions of those. At least with the effect monsters, you could make interesting synergies and interesting thematic experiences where you kind of don't have that so much with the spells. You can't really make a deck that has like 5 effect monsters and then a ton of spells that really synergize with. Almost every deck you see has to have 25, 23 or so effect monsters, and then the remaining 15 cards have to be spells and traps at most. And when you have an anti-spell festival, spells become useless, and when you have a anti-trap card festival, the traps would become useless. So effect monsters are almost certainly your best bet for Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel specifically. Extra cards are probably at the bottom of your priority list, because they really have to synergize with the right effect monsters in the first place. So yeah, I think effect monsters would be where you'd want to go. It's just, if you want it easy to understand and simplistic, spend all of your crafting points making effect monsters. There might be a festival where you can't play effect monsters and you just need normal cards. Odds are you would probably have enough normal cards to play that, and everybody would hate that so much anyways. Inherently, that the problem is that a lot of these let's see, we got 39 more minutes. Can we do 3 games in 39 minutes in solo? Well, that's going to be the question, certainly, is that can we get in and out of these games fast enough? Playing our Zodiac Tri-Brigade. I really don't want to play ranked at this moment. There's not a lot of reason to. I'm not going to make it to Platinum. I'm just not at that. My meta deck, whether it is the Zoo Tropic game deck that I'm playing here, or whether it is the Flowander deck, which I really don't understand as much, both of those decks are not quite good enough for me to get any further, and I just didn't have enough time. And inherently, it's more that I just didn't have enough time because of the dumb festival that took up half of a month's worth of effort. Had I been slightly winning at like a 51-55% win ratio over the course of 15 extra days, then I probably would have made it to Platinum. And inherently, if they threw another festival out this next month, I might fall so far downward that I'm not even in gold at the end of next month, and you could backslide quite a bit. These festivals are frankly just not festive. They're big wastes of time. Playing against the computer is very easy, and you don't run into the problem of timers, you don't run into the problem of stalls. Yeah, which you really are getting it on both ends, particularly in this game, in which players stall and they just don't play particularly well, and players, you run into the timer when you're not playing fast enough. Well, man, they really don't want me to be able to defeat him that way. Unfortunately, I don't think he has a choice there. You also don't have to play particularly well or worry about big tricks when playing in solo mode. Like, at a certain level, yes, tricks may happen, but they're known quantities, because you kind of know this B-Trooper deck is only going to do B-Trooper things. What sucks is I had a daily quest to do solo modes, and I had done it yesterday, and it just gave me another daily quest to do solo modes. So that's annoying. And also, we've just increasingly getting more and more single player stuff, and I'm just gonna have to take some time out and do the single player stuff and potentially unlock a new let's move quickly here. I really am just gonna have to unlock a new, do we have time to do that? A new solo mode and unlock new secret packs from finishing the solo mode that I'm then not going to spend any gems on. Which, that's not the worst way to do things, really. I have to be fair here, though, and say that when you are playing the Zodiac deck, it is very much a solved issue of you're going to do the exact same thing, and I could literally program a macro, if there was such an interface, to just do exactly what I want this deck to do. Black Friday, I suppose it's worth mentioning, is over, and so it's Cyber Monday, and there are some sales still going on, though. Like a Bowflex equipment I saw was on sale on Amazon, if that interests anybody. Like rider bikes. I don't know if Bowflex has any kind of quality behind its name, or if it ever had any real quality behind its name. Come to think of it, it could have just been heavily advertised, and certainly people growing up of a certain age who would have been spending a lot of time watching TV probably got severely advertised to with a bunch of brands and brand names, and then that potentially led to people thinking those brands were actually good quality when they very possibly weren't, or the brands have changed significantly. That's happened for almost everything. Sears Hardware, for instance, and Sears as a company was the place to be for many decades, and it just got worse and worse. And most refrigerator type companies have gotten worse and worse, and they've just changed how things. A lot of cars have gotten worse and worse, and they're definitely trying to sell on recognizable brand names when they really just don't have the same level of quality. And there's a lot of just buyer beware. You've got to do your research on every single model and every single product, or you're going to be gambling, which mostly you just have to gamble. But yeah, that's saying a lot without really saying anything. I guess what we probably want here is something like this, and then go into battle mode, and then attack this, and didn't do this. For the accountability section, on top of playing the Vagrant, I didn't really get a ton done, but I did watch the first season of Human Resources, which is the Big Mouth spinoff. Honestly, I kind of feel like that Human Resources does a better job than Big Mouth. Perhaps it is just speaking a little bit more towards my own specific age, but the Big Mouth meets The Office as a concept works a little bit better than Big Mouth being a coming of age teen drama that's gone 6 seasons. That being said, I'm also fairly willing to believe that Big Mouth season 1 may have been pretty rough, and they may have finally found their footing in later seasons. But I really haven't been into watching Big Mouth, which, yeah, it does kind of feel like it's just going to be the same gimmick over and over again. Alright. Did I watch anything else? I probably did, but I honestly couldn't tell you if I did. I'm wasting time watching the Bleach 1,000 Years War, which is slow, to say the least. Which, that is, I guess, something to be said about anime in general, is that if you're going to try and watch something that comes from that older generation, it is potentially going to be just so much slower than what you would expect. And the idea of filler just is not something that's really embraced in modern anime, where you very possibly, even if you're a very successful show, are only going to get one season. Where things like One Piece, Dragon Ball, things like that are just filler after filler after filler. by doing these solo player stuff, we are getting gems. So there is something helpful to that. I keep trying to watch Rick and Morty. The Adult Swim app unlocks some episodes of Rick and Morty, but it seems like it is done in a kind of weird way, like a week or two after the episode airs. And I still am stupidly paying for cable subscription, so I could just watch it on my Dish TV, but I'm actively boycotting actually using it. Which is dumb. Somebody else is using it. But yeah, I could be watching things there. But that would also be the only thing I'm watching there. My over-the-air HD antenna can't get cable channels like Adult Swim, Cartoon Network. But it gets a lot of other things. Of course, those other things are very much where your mileage is going to vary based on just what is actively being shown over the air as far as shows. And in this Christmas season, it's not going to show you what's going to be in the fall, spring seasons, when you start to see regular serialized shows, and there's really no telling as far as what will be canceled and what won't. I did just see that the 90s show, I guess sequel to the 70s show, has been announced for Netflix. Also, the Wednesday Addams show was the most watched Netflix original, with the exception of Squid Games. So now it is, as far as watch time, down to Squid Games is in number 1, Wednesday Addams is in number 2, and then Stranger Things is in number 3. Which is, I guess, to say that Netflix is probably getting the message that kid-focused content or kid-like games sells. I don't know. Yeah. Like, certainly Squid Games is an outlier there, but Stranger Things is a teenage drama with kids in it, and Wednesday Addams is a kids drama thing. And I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of kids actually did watch Squid Games also. So, yeah. It might also very well be a case that Squid Games was just the first real breakout success to happen as far as the weirder foreign content that they gambled on quite a bit. It's fairly undeniable if you go down those alleyways of what has been released on Netflix or licensed for Netflix, that a lot of that content is definitely more in vain as far as a weirder content, weirder type of content. And yes, I saw an article that once again is promoting the idea that Netflix password sharing crackdowns are coming faster than you think. Which, yeah, I wouldn't be super surprised if that's the case. I think it'll probably save me some time just to do this. Like, theoretically, I could have summoned a 3 and then summoned a 4. And that would have been slightly better. Suppose it wouldn't be the worst time for them to start cracking down on password sharing. It'd be bad for everybody who's broke and with the recession and all, but Disney Plus was apparently losing a ridiculous amount of money when I thought Disney Plus was very successful, and it seems to me like everything else has failed miserably. Either ideologically, things like Amazon Prime have failed, or literally, financially they've failed. You should probably start talking about video game news. In fact, it may be fairly easy today to just focus on video game news. Not that there's particularly a lot of it. Alright, so we had 20 minutes to spare on that. Now special summon monsters 5 times. Or activate a spell card. And we have 20 minutes until this resets for the next month. Which, yeah, Master Duel is still very much set around the months resetting in Japanese time. Yeah. So I'm at like gold tier 3 right now. I'd need 3 more wins to get back to gold tier 1. It kind of doesn't matter as long as they don't fall down to silver in the next 20 minutes. I can play. I really do have to say though, I wish The Vagrant was a more interesting game than it is, because it really is not giving me a lot to talk about. It's worth pointing out that Pong is at its 50th anniversary for being released. Widely accepted as the first video game to ever be made. Suppose we could probably click on this to see the shape here of this cabinet. It is pretty rough, which is true for a lot of cabinets, and that they were just pieces of woods with some vinyl on them being moved around. There's a lot of damage that happens around old arcade cabinets. The Donkey Kong arcade cabinet I have has a decent amount of damage here. And frankly, the particle board wood on my Donkey Kong it's just not fine furniture that's likely going to last forever. Noticeably, either the video game museum in Frisco, Texas has gone quiet or stopped posting, or because I have not seen them post in a while, and I'm getting a little concerned. It's certainly too early to call into question whether they are still in business, but it does kind of seem to me like they may be out of business. Speaking of out of business, now the Wikipedia is begging for donations too, which, yeah, that sucks. There probably is, I need to actually play here, a little bit more around the idea of the first video game, in the sense that I bet there was something that was electronic and interactive that didn't have video in it before Pong, that should be considered a early predecessor to video games. It definitely feels like there could have been some kind of text-based game that would have happened. Certainly like an 8-track player, feels like you could make an 8-track choose your own adventure book that would be an interactive experience where it's like, if you decide to do this, press track 1, otherwise press track 2, or otherwise leave it alone, and it keeps on playing. Like, you couldn't have that much variety in an 8-track player, but you could certainly have some, and you could shuffle up multiple 8 tracks to do a choose your own adventure. Although I'm not sure I've ever heard of anything doing that with 8 tracks. Maybe 8 tracks were just not popular enough. But yeah, there definitely were probably some kind of electronic gadget of some sort before Pong that just didn't have video in it, so thus it wasn't effectively a video game. The original Pong was created using tricks of an oscilloscope to create vector line images. It's also very possible that somebody with access to like one of the big supercomputers at a university programmed something, some small game that would have been the real first video game. And they just never told anybody about it. Yeah. Pong, by the way, as I'm skimming the Wikipedia page, is in the Smithsonian Institute in DC due to its cultural impact. There's a lot of history, certainly, around Pong. Oh, I got the video game console book 2.0 that shows pictures of video game consoles and takes apart a few of them and doesn't take apart a lot of the other rarer ones. It's kind of interesting, but it is very much a picture book. It's a nice little reference picture book that, as we scroll down here and just kind of look at the images, will show you things like this. I definitely remember my grandfather had a knockoff Pong like device that really could only play Pong, that looked similar to these but was not any of the mainstream like Magnavoxes or Commodores or Ataris, and I've never been able to see a picture of anybody else having the specific unit that he had. Suppose there is even a small chance that it was in part a kit. It looked like a finished toy product, certainly, but it is within the realm of possibility that my grandfather bought it as a kit and soldered all the components in the circuit board together and then put it inside its own plastic housing. But he definitely didn't invent it or build it, so it's not something that extreme. It's just, he probably got it just cheap. Relatively cheap. So get that daily quest as far as special summoning 5 things. Yeah, unfortunately there really is just not a lot that you can say about Pong. A new RetroArch core has been added to RetroArch Steam. You can download this core either from RetroArch Steam by going to the Manage Cores or by simply clicking this link. Which core is it? It's EP128 core added. Which, let's just click on that and see what that post will say. There are now 54 cores in total for RetroArch Steam. This one is an emulator for the Z80 based home computer that the original EP128 EMU supports. So now they've switched from, they've added EP128 versus EP128 EMU. That's Enterprise 64/128 Vidotron TVC, Amstrad CPU, and ZX Spectrum. Focus on Enterprise and TVC, which all of those are incredibly irrelevant to me consoles. I know the ZX Spectrum was somewhat popular, particularly in the UK. Let's see. Let's keep on playing. After this game, I need to go and probably collect the daily quest, because this will be... We'll go and collect the daily quest and we won't have enough victories to get up even 1 rank, let alone the 2 or 3. For the Video Games Chronicle articles today, strong Cyberpunk sales drive record Q3 financial reports for CD Projekt Red. We're still falling behind on these articles where we get repeats. I still have not worked on that. Microsoft likely to offer concessions soon to help game. If anything, it kind of feels like what is getting saved is articles that were in the middle or at the beginning of the last page from the last stream, which maybe that makes some sense. It is, once again, a little bit disappointing. I said this last time I did a programming project too that worked really well. It's a little disappointing that the save, the like, share, and subscribe animation played as well and worked as well as it did, because yeah, that could have been something that would have been more of a challenge. Yeah. Just gonna go ahead and toss all of these. Bring this out. I don't remember what the other daily quest was. So, maybe it was dealing damage. Maybe it was doing damage against monsters. Let's see. PlayStation's end of year deals promotion features savings of up to 80%. Over 700 products are discounted in the PlayStation Store sale. I don't think any of that is actual physical stuff, though. So, if you're already big into PlayStation Store purchases and digital purchases, that would be fine. It's kind of a shame that amongst all the Cyber Monday and Black Friday sales, we need to activate more spell cards. We have 6 minutes to activate one spell card. What would be the easiest way to do that? Just, I guess, jump into a game and hope it lets us do that quickly. I guess the question here is, would it count, or does it only calculate what you did at the end of a game? So can I activate a spell card in the next minute and then spend 20 minutes in this game and then it counts, or do I have to finish the game one way or the other? Can I play a spell card and then run away? It's not really worth experimenting that much on, frankly. And immediately, yeah, you run into the problem. You have either the other player doesn't respond or move fast, or you don't move fast. You're just always being squeezed between the two timers. Moving on with news. CD Projekt is planning on more transmedia projects following the success of Edge Runners. They keep promoting this and showing these characters. These characters, I mean, at least one of these characters is severely unlikely to come back in any Cyberpunk or Cyberpunk Edge Runners experience, and more than likely neither of the characters would come back. So you've created this love for a couple of characters who are not in the actual Cyberpunk 2077 game, even though I know there's more Cyberpunk than just 2077 and Edge Runners. There are board games in the Cyberpunk universe that have, I think, been around for a lot longer. But yeah, that love is just not going to happen. And I would imagine that I think it was Studio Trigger, would never come back and do another Cyberpunk thing either. They'd just probably be too busy. Okay. So I countered his counter, which then leaves me to do this, to then summon this, to then summon this, to then get rid of that. It's in the turn. There's something else I wanted to say. They also talked about, and we'll probably see this article, how the Witcher remake is going to be a more open world reimagining of Witcher 1, which that's not super surprising, really. That's probably the wrong one to summon, but maybe not. summon this, activate this, summon this. Summon that one. Summon, I guess that one next. Then summon finally this one. And we can't summon anything else or do anything else, so... Well, no, we're waiting for this guy to respond. Let's see. I think Nintendo has already put out this movie trailer. And... people... I guess are gonna talk about if there's anything interesting here. There is an interesting emphasis here in that this is the Super Mario Odyssey King, Super Mario Odyssey style of castle, which kind of implies that the castle in Super Mario 64 either was a different castle or was significantly shifted and changed compared to the way it's depicted now. This castle in particular really seems to only have a small throne and a big throne room, and they're just like one room. There is oddly no bedroom or anything like that, or any other kind of rooms. No kitchen, no dining room in this castle. What can you really take from that? I'd say not much. Other than you assume that the story is going to be somewhat in line with the experience that you have in Super Mario Odyssey. That the Princess Peach and the Mario and the Luigi you see in Mario Odyssey, for as little as you see Princess Peach and Luigi in Super Mario Odyssey, are going to be the characters. Yeah, you just have this little throne and this giant stained glass. There's, I think, maybe some paintings here in the corners. Not in the game, but there might be some paintings or some magical transports. You probably aren't going to see much of the castle anyways. I could see seeing Princess Peach in the castle and then she immediately getting kidnapped by Bowser. In a lot of ways, it might be the exact same story as Odyssey, just done as the story in Odyssey. But that might be fairly repetitive. That up until this point, it's felt much more like the implication that this was supposed to be a reimagining of Mario's first introduction into the Mushroom Kingdom and that world, and Mario wouldn't know Princess Peach at all, and this is his first time saving her. I think that was the implication. Go ahead and win. So we get a victory, we go up a rank. At this point, it calculates your progress towards that. Ending the season on Tier 2 versus Tier 3 does not change anything. So then the question is, does that count as a finished daily quest. Nope, didn't move fast enough. Alright, so now we are at the duel 3 times in the next 30 days, and we'll just keep that daily quest. Fusion summon, pendulum summon, or link summon 3 monsters in the next 30 days, and activate a trap card twice. Fusion summon or whatever 3 times. We've got our new daily quest, which for December I guess I'll try to log in more often, and then we've got a new Duel Live. We are still slowly making progress on these lifetime achievements, and there's definitely fewer of these lifetime achievements as there once was, as we have gotten about 3/5 of the way done with duelist levels, and that seems to be something that slowly is progressing. And that is something I think that they should probably have change. Like, the idea of duels levels still going up when it really doesn't reward you much is kind of crazy. I could potentially stop playing at this point. Boy, is this monitor, which definitely does show signs of breaking. My third monitor does. But the color is just way off on it too. Like, this picture of this dog is a nice brown golden on my secondary monitor, since the main monitor is Yu-Gi-Oh! But it's a nice brownish golden on my secondary monitor, and on my third monitor it is incredibly washed out and white. There's basically no brown in it at all. That doesn't have anything to do with anything, and I imagine on the stream it still looks perfectly fine. At a certain level I can only know so much as far as what it actually looks like on any stream and someone else's monitor. And the way OBS works and the video cards work, it would have to be a case of the video card being effectively broken before the colors would be presenting and recording or streaming the wrong way. I don't know if I mentioned it, but I did spend $50 on games for the sale, so I'm just continuing down the path of getting more games and slightly newer games. Buying several things that I showed off on that list, but also eliminating a lot of things too. I brought it down from 100 to 50. I know I got PC Building Simulator, but some of those games were still selling at like $12 each or $7 when they really should be about $5. And since the autumn sale at Steam was not really offering any points for their point shop, which I think they've completely abandoned, and it wasn't offering any kind of rewards, the discount alone was the only motivating factor. I do have a slight hope that a Steam Deck version 2 comes out, and that might make my gaming library a little bit more valued than it already is, which is already very valuable. But mostly, as I'm going to continue to try to be a YouTuber, it does just make a lot of sense to buy more games and newer games. He played this completely wrong. Had he simply put it over here, that Rugiki would have worked. Video Games Chronicles says their plans have been released for a game console for dogs. The project is designed to offer special benefits for pets. Pet owners can be pretty crazy. Your mileage varies certainly between whether your dog or cat is in any way interested in what is on the screen, and arguably for dogs that like to run around maybe more than cats do, even, a audio-based not only controller but speaker on the collar might be more of a interesting thing. Inherently, though, I have to question whether this is, at a certain level I have to kind of question whether it's ethical, but at another level I have to question whether it's going to be viable, because it's not like dogs can really 100% with our certain, we can't be certain that dogs are really wanting to engage or should be allowed to engage with playing. There is a situation where dogs can have so much fun wagging their tails they can actually make their tails sore, and it can look like they broke their tail or something like that, which I don't know if dogs can even really break their tail. So overstimulating, over-engaging a dog could be a problem. Or, yeah. And you could certainly get some dogs riled up and they could run around the house and break things. Or you could set pets and animals down a path of becoming jaded like humans and no longer interested in socializing with humans. Wow. Imagine if you turned your dog into a 15-year-old kid who no longer wants to hang out with their family and just wants to play video games all day. A lot of pet owners do have frustration with the fact that they aren't engaging with their pets as much as they would like. But I don't think that's really a solution to it. This definitely feels like something that would be a rich person's toy. Let's see. Let's watch the trailer, because, I mean, this may very well be the future. Yeah, you can see here it's just like you've got a pointer here potentially going to hurt his nose, pointing on this touchscreen. And it seems to me like they're literally just having to feed and train these dogs that don't seem like they want to have anything with it. This is not potentially entertainment as much as this is just learned and taught behavior. And if you have to give a treat, or they're going to expect a treat every time they learn that behavior, you're either going to overfeed your dog or just in general disappoint him. Yeah, it seems like, looking at this, every time he bends down, it is dropping another treat. Because he wouldn't be bending down. He would keep his eyes on the screen. And I'm sure something like this is going to try and sell itself as this is engaging with... Yeah, there's a little treat dispenser here at the bottom of this. And this looks like it's an iPad, which is going to get broken and knocked over very quickly. Yep. It's probably going to get sold as engaging with a dog's hunting instincts and keeping him in a more natural state, but it's really not the case. I wouldn't agree with that at all. One of the things I did with one of my old dogs was a fairly dumb and dangerous thing to do, but I know, I'm absolutely certain, I guess I don't know, that he really, really enjoyed it, is I took him to basically a forest and let him just run off a leash. Which he, as a house, well, he was an outside dog, but he was a city dog, certainly. Definitely enjoyed running around the forest, chasing after rabbits, dangerously running close towards prickly plants. And so it definitely could have been a porcupine type situation where he would have gotten hit by a porcupine and chased after it. It definitely also at one point looked like he was just going to run into the bushes and never come out again. So yeah, that dog was kind of old, but it would have been a sad and weird way to say, well, I accidentally let him free in the forest and now he's just out there in the wild. I'm not sure he would have actually survived even 24 hours of one night, because he just was a city dog that had all his food and water handed to him. So I would say, if you want to engage with your pet, keep them probably on a leash. Leash laws are a good idea. In my case, there wasn't anybody else around other than animals, but even at that, there definitely could have been a bobcat in any bush that could have just grabbed him and eaten him. I was too young to really think about that. But yeah, keep them on a leash, take them to a beach, take them to a forest, let them smell smells and see sights, take them on hikes, let them engage with nature, and at the same time engage with nature yourself more. And definitely do it as a team, as a pet owner and a pet. Don't sit them in front of a iPad. It's inherently, putting an iPad and a treat dispenser in front of a dog is maybe only slightly worse than putting a iPad in front of a baby. It's just lazy parenting. Here's that article I was talking about. The Witcher remake will be open world. It'll be a modern reimagining of the 2007 game. Having not played the 2007 game, I don't know what really needs to stay and what really needs to go. At a certain point, I wouldn't be surprised if the collectible cards for sleeping around and the general idea of sleeping around gets toned down in the remake. But it does have to kind of stay somewhat in line with the Witcher books. It has to tell the general idea and the general story. But I could see them definitely try to be fairly off of what actually happened in the Witcher books and tell a alternate universe telling of that story. And that's not a terrible thing. The Batman story, for instance, would be a kind of comparison to that. How many different artists and writers have told the Batman's parents getting killed and Bruce Wayne turning into Batman, but each of them have told it slightly differently and perhaps improved on the mythos a little bit. But yeah, even compared to Witcher 3, the Witcher remake needs to be fairly better than Cyberpunk 2077, definitely, but even The Witcher 3, because there's just been enough time now that expectations should be higher. There's also a danger that The Witcher remake might come off very much like a Japanese RPG game where there's just a ton of grinding. That's kind of the problem I think I have with Zelda Breath of the Wild. As I've talked more about Zelda Breath of the Wild than I've actually played of Zelda Breath of the Wild at this point, it feels like. But Breath of the Wild feels too much like a generic Japanese RPG and doesn't feel unique. Feels like we're gonna probably use a connection here. This could be because all the servers have gone down. Yep. You can now duel outside of it. So we were locked in to rank 2. I saw a YouTube video, I think from Ars Technica. Well, this says you win and you'll gain a rank. I don't know if that's really the case. But I saw a video on YouTube showing the mocapping effects of getting the kill animations for the Callisto Protocol. Also, 2 hours of the Callisto Protocol gameplay is leaked ahead of next week's release. The game is, I guess, way closer to being released than I thought it was. Still weird to potentially have the game come out in the mid-December. And I guess at a certain level this also implies that the Dead Space remake is trying to be released fairly in a fairly recent amount of time. This trailer. I saw also a brief picture of like the weapon upgrade consoles, and they look very Dead Spacey. Interesting, you're playing as this male prisoner and then seems like you're going to get a companion. Yeah, there was the weapon upgrade system. Too much of this game does look like Dead Space, which is fine. It is a spiritual successor to Dead Space, but it also feels kind of weird to be so on the nose with effectively just let's do Dead Space. But again, it seems like they're also throwing in at least one female Asian character in the trailer to try and sell, I guess, to Asian countries a little bit better. And she may be your escort quest. There they just showed a telekinesis ability. Like, history may come back and negatively reflect on the Callisto Protocol in the sense that right now it feels like they rushed to make a Dead Space 1 remake to just spite the creator of the Callisto Protocol and spite it and compete against it when they really didn't need that competition and shouldn't be shouldn't really have to deal with that competition, in my personal opinion. But looking at that trailer and just seeing how much of this is just straight up Dead Space, I almost wonder if EA, I think, is the owners of the Dead Space series, if they got word or if they were just directly told by the Callisto Protocol director that I'm going to straight up rip off Dead Space and there's nothing you can do about it. So it definitely looks like there is room for a lawsuit. Anybody can sue for anything, certainly, but I think you potentially have a copyright infringement lawsuit looking at that trailer, as far as just how little is different. And I don't think you can quite make an argument. Well, I guess I can rank up. Let's just keep on playing then. It says we need a few more victories to get to platinum. If we could get to platinum, that would be great. Maybe I'm misreading that screen and it says you can duel outside of the window, but right at the moment you're not outside of the window. As a consumer, ignoring a potential lawsuit, which may happen, the game isn't quite offering enough. Like, if the Callisto Protocol is just a better Dead Space and it doesn't this time have the crazy cult in it and the crazy alien markers in it, that is an improvement, certainly. You're not then hampered by the weirdness around that, but I was kind of expecting something more. you know? And I'm not sure I'm gonna get anything more than that. And I don't even know what I was expecting, but it does feel like I would have liked something more. Let's see, moving on, the original Warzone has been relaunched as a stripped-back Warzone Caldera. This free-to-play game was taken offline to focus on Warzone 2's release. So, that's weird. Arma 3 Studio says game footage is being used to spread fake news about the Ukrainian war. Bohemia Interactive offers tips for distinguishing in-game videos from real-world footage. That might be an interesting news article to get beyond your standard viewer that would already be interested in video game news. Undoubtedly, there have been some instances I've seen of people spreading fake news with video game military characters, but also I wouldn't be surprised if this is a attempt to just get Arma in the news itself, or to be a little bit political. Although, in this case, the Ukrainian war, the only people that you're going to piss off are heavy Russian supporters, or Putin supporters. So they're trying to show some receipts here of where game footage here has been altered to add a shaky cam to it and add lower resolution. Like, it does seem to me like this is the same footage. That seems to be their only example, though. Yeah. It would be better if a resistance and inoculation to fake news was taught by less interested parties in school. There is a real danger, certainly, like drumming up war after 9/11 to invade Iraq potentially wouldn't have happened had the United States citizens been already inoculated towards propaganda, as it was what it's called before it was called fake news. And definitely the Bush administration had to make a very hard push and straight up lie to Congress to push for a war with Iraq. Let's go ahead and attach ourselves to this. On the other hand, if real, actual journalism, and I guess the winners write history in this case, around the Vietnam War, if that had not happened, then we probably would have stayed around in the Vietnam War even longer. Well, guess that means I can't do anything this turn. Since the Ukrainian invasion by Russia so far has not involved NATO, although give it any moment now, or the United States, somebody in the United States like me, I personally come off with a weird feeling. It's like I've definitely seen more people watching combat footage on Reddit and it getting promoted to the front page more, but my general lack of interest impression on it is that I suspect there's probably a lot of propaganda out there that says Ukraine is doing better than it really is doing. It is probably doing way better than Russia expected, or Putin expected, or anyone else expected, with them getting a lot of weapons and support from other people. But it would be an overstatement to say that they're getting through it easy. No invasion is easy. And there probably is some propaganda that is saying Russia is doing a little bit worse than they are doing, but I believe that there's a lot of truth in it, as bad as Russia's doing. And certainly if I was in Russia, I'd probably be seeing propaganda to the exact opposite, where if I was in Russia, I would probably be seeing a lot of stuff showing that Russia is doing very well and that Ukraine is doing very poorly. And the history will be determined by the victors more than anything. I don't think we're anywhere close towards the point where United States citizens actively do want a war with Russia, or to engage with Russia and bring troops into Ukraine, because once NATO forces or US military forces are there and people are losing their own sons and daughters in a foreign conflict, that does not sound appealing, I think, the most. And there's really just no taste for all-out war like there once was, where the United States is not going to go to war with Russia and then try to annex Russian territory or take over Russia, turn it into the 51st state or something like that. Like, all-out conquering is not really on the table these days. So it would just be this middling engagement where you're likely just going to end up drawing the borders slightly differently, and then end up with a bunch of US bases on the border with Russia. Or it's gonna be a horrible turn of events, and then it will just be like Vietnam all over again. It would also be fairly weird if, like, Ukraine applied for statehood. I think we probably would not accept Ukraine as a 51st state. It'd be weird for the United States to have a state in the middle of Eastern Europe. It'd make a lot more sense for them to try to join the European Union, and yet the European Union's not really on board with that. And regime change is really what I think Westerners really would just like to see in Russia. It's just a new Putin who's slightly less crazy and yet still would probably be fairly corrupt and controllable. And this is taking too long. This probably would be our last game today, but I guess I'm trying to race the sun, as it were, and get to platinum. One last chance. We are winning at the moment. Moving on with the video game news, because I'm talking Russia for some reason. I guess that was connected to Arma, but even in that, it's worth pointing out, I'm not really talking about Arma as a game there. That whole article didn't leave me more interested in playing Arma. Alright. I'm gonna, I guess, play a little risky here and bring out this guy last. And then activate this guy. Toss this one to destroy that. And hopefully that works. I kind of wish there was a card that... I'm going to toss this. See if this counters an effect. Yeah, I think that's going to work. This will cut his health attack in half and counter it, if I'm reading this correct. Also, their effects are negated in response to this card's activation. So I've been underplaying the value of this card, obviously. That's a much more valuable card than what I thought. And then Call of the Grave. Yeah. Oh well. That didn't activate. That was just some extra gravy. Doesn't matter. Now that we've potentially negated all of his cards that he can activate, we'll no longer have the stalls that were happening where it was asking him whether he wanted to activate Call of the Grave. Let's see, December's PlayStation Plus games have leaked. Mass Effect Legendary Edition, Biomutant are among this month's free games. I guess leaked is slightly different than them just being announced. The other game is called Divine Knockout. I haven't heard of that. Is there really a big difference between them announcing the games when they're announced ahead of when they're actually released anyways, versus the information being leaked? It does just seem kind of pointless to chase that kind of leak. In fact, it's kind of pointless, and I've said this before, to chase any leaks or look at any leaks. Video games releases and announcements are hardly secretive anyways, and it's like the announcements come out, they come out very frequently, often very repetitively. As far as video game leaks, I would be much happier to see leaks about, say, how business is done behind scenes, what the payroll salaries are for a lot of employees, things like that. Like, there's not a lot of information out there that I've seen as far as if you were somebody who had a rich uncle that passed away and he gave you, well, he doesn't have to have passed away. You have a rich uncle that gave you $1 million and you wanted to start a video game company. There's not a lot of information out there as far as how that is done, how other companies do it, what hiring firms are good about hiring video game developers, whether that's programmers or sound technicians or writers and things like that. If there are any firms or middle management type companies that would help you there. The sad truth is, in that scenario, you probably would end up either doing business with just people who've never done video game companies before, and maybe at best have some expertise in just starting LLCs and lawyers to start a company in general, and then you might end up using something, I think the service is called Honey, that gets advertised to do payroll solutions and things like that. Most businesses in general are run by people who really don't know what they're doing and aren't qualified to run a business in the first place. But yeah, how you would structure a video game company, how you would be the boss, what would make you a better boss, how you would just lay out the office. Like, should you put the programmers all in the corner or should they be in the center of the room? Things like that even. Let's let him do whatever he's gonna do. There. Like, here's almost the exact same article, except for instead of leaked, it's been confirmed. December's Xbox Live games with gold titles have been confirmed. They are Colt Canyon and Bladed Fury. 2 games I don't think I've ever even heard about. So, not a really big announcement for December. Maybe they're doing something on top of the games with gold to would counter that, or maybe they just don't need to put out a bunch of free games in the middle of December and are more interested in having people sell and buy new games. At the bottom of this article, I don't know how it really connects. They do say Microsoft's proposed acquisition of Activision Blizzard has been approved unconditionally in Serbia. I don't know if that's new news, but it's funny to at the bottom here just add extra lines of your article to link to other articles that have nothing to do with the article at all. It's like it feels like a real abuse of the idea of hyperlinks in the internet in general, to straight up just have ads that are promoting other stuff. Alright, let's put an end to this. If we let them go that far. But once you've got a 2600 character, I think at that point you are ready to counter and destroy. I was basically just waiting for him to run out of cards. And let's see, summon this, and unless that was going to trigger something, then summon this, discard all these, because I'm not going to really pick, summon this, activate this, go ahead and activate this too. Guess I could have activated this and ended up with that. Yeah, but it doesn't matter. Yeah, one would hope that the win streak here would help me get into platinum faster, but I don't know. When you get a lot of points, and even in that case I guess I got a lot of rewards, we're still getting these like normal and rare cards. I'm not even really looking at them. And they do seem to be, as far as the reward cards, a subset of all the cards. Moving on with the news, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet glitches. We're seeing players duplicate legendary Pokemon. It's not clear when the glitch will be fixed with a future pact. I vaguely recall, though, them saying that they were going to try and crack down on impossible glitched Pokemon on Pokemon Home, which I assume that Scarlet and Violet are actually connecting to Pokemon Home if you want to transfer Pokemon from one game to another. So, depending on whether this glitch is glitching legitimate legendaries and can't be detected by Nintendo, it's very possible that people will get away with it. And recognizing that this is a kids game for kids, it's probably better for Nintendo to just straight up let the kids get away with duplicating the games. I may sound like an old man, but I really think in this case this is just one of those situations where they're going to ruin their own fun, and you probably shouldn't do that if you want to try to have the most amount of fun in Scarlet and Violet. Arguably, I would also make an argument to just not purchasing or playing Scarlet and Violet, because I don't think there's a good enough of a game there, even outside of the bugs. A second playthrough through Arceus if you haven't actually finished it. These Pokemon games must be a lot shorter than I recall. I never really played them in the first place. I'm not sure I've actually played even a single Pokemon game all the way through. Or mainline Pokemon game all the way through. But yeah, they do seem like they are too easy to beat. Even on top of the fact that there's just a lot of grinding and time wasting in Pokemon games. Video Games Chronicle says the Super Mario Bros. Movie second trailer is here. Here we can see Mario is in a Mario Kart. So I will watch this trailer, but if it loads, I won't show it on screen. And because knowing Nintendo, it'll almost get DMCA'd. So I'll describe it. Mario is walking out of an alleyway into a big Coliseum arena. He's looking around. Looks like he's about to fight Donkey Kong, almost in a Smash Brothers type arena. There's a pipe that they're fighting on back and forth. He jumped trying to attack Donkey Kong, and now Donkey Kong beat him down. Now they skip to a different scene where Bowser has Luigi, so apparently Luigi's the person who's been kidnapped. And then they're flashing back to Mario and Luigi being plumbers, and I assume New York. They showed a brief map of the Mushroom Kingdom. Princess Peach and Toad are shown here, and they have like weapons on there, and she has like a battle suit on instead of the princess outfit, although in this next scene she does have the outfit. We're seeing a lot of 2D references of Mario really failing miserably to do platforming in 2D. If anything, it definitely looks like it is a journey of Toad and Princess Peach all together, and definitely feels like Princess Peach is the cool one, and Mario is the comic relief loser. Honestly, it feels like Princess Peach might have more lines of dialogue in the whole game too. So yeah, it is very possible that this is... I didn't mean to activate that, but I guess that will save me some time. That this is really a Princess Peach movie. I wouldn't be surprised if this is kind of heavily also like a Wreck-It Ralph ripoff. And knowing that Wreck-It Ralph and Ralph Breaks the Internet, the sequel, are already out there, I wonder if there's a lot that they can do different. Well, I can't special summon anything, so I guess I'm doomed here. If I actually listened to the trailer, I probably would get more voice acting than I would hear from the actor playing Mario, which I haven't heard anybody say anything about the voice acting yet. So maybe it's a little bit better in the second trailer. So here you can see she's in either what you would call an adventure suit or battle suit with this weapon, and here Toad has a pan as a weapon. This might be a racing suit, but yeah, definitely feels like a significant portion of the group of the movie is going to have these three traveling together. It almost makes more sense to have Luigi be the character that gets kidnapped, because it's not like Princess Peach has ever really been depicted that much as a helpless maiden in distress outside of forms of entertainment in the past decade or so. In the past, certainly that was the case. Yeah, the princess is in another castle in Mario Bros. 1 is definitely, she's not a character. She says 2 sentences at the very end of the game, and that's basically it. Maybe it's a little bit more than 2 sentences. But yeah, by the time they started having Mario cartoons and things like that, I guess the live action Mario movie. Oh, I don't have anything I can do here. Darn it. Even in that, they kind of go in a different direction. The actual article here from Video Games Chronicles just says it's coming to Europe, South America, and Australia before the US. The UK will be getting the film on March 30th. So, the fact that it's not coming to the US first maybe shows something interesting, but it may also just be nothing. Like, I doubt there's another cartoon movie coming out to theaters anytime soon that would compete to it. There is a big question, though, as far as whether parents want to take kids to theaters to watch a Mario movie in the first place, or any movie. It's just so expensive, and some people may be afraid of COVID or just cold and flu season in general. Moving on, speaking of Nintendo, apparently a major Smash Bros. Tournament was shut down by Nintendo. Smash World Tour also accuses a rival tournament of meddling. There's, I think, a fairly long history of drama around game tournaments in general, but also drama around trying to have Smash Brothers and Nintendo games in fighting tournaments. For the most part, it seems like Nintendo just does not want to have any kind of Smash Brothers tournaments. At most, they sometimes seem to give their blessing to people having tournaments around the most recent Smash Brothers game, and only the most recent Smash Brothers game. Yeah, I don't have any cards in the graveyard. That's why nothing is working here. I've somehow... They managed to banish all my cards prematurely. But even at that, Nintendo seems to try to control these tournaments. Inherently, none of these tournaments have enough money to fight the lawsuit that they might have if they just did what needs to happen, which is to go ahead and have the tournament anyways and say, screw you, Nintendo, you can't stop us from having a tournament just because your game is being played. They can probably legally stop you from advertising the tournament using any copyrightable material, but if you went with a very basic, here is a text announcement of we're going to have a tournament at Smash Brothers that's going to be played, that's not copyrightable. It's when you start to have pictures and images from the game, or if you were to live stream footage of the game, that's probably copyrightable, although arguably it might also be fair use. It definitely would be hard to argue, hard to be certain that one side or the other would win in that kind of copyright claim. Let's see. Moving on, Final Fantasy XVI has been rated in Brazil, suggesting new release news could be coming soon. The game currently has a vague mid-2023 release. What is it rated as? Not recommended for children under 16 due to sexual content, sensitive issues, and violence. Final Fantasy XVI is also the one that somebody tried to call us kind of a cancel movement on, because there was no people of color in this medieval Central European story. And at a certain point, yeah, you could potentially have people of color in a medieval Central European style story, but you would have to depict them as manservants or slaves. So, is that the level of progressiveness that people want? Does representation matter when you're representing people being oppressed? I mean, particularly when you're making a fantasy story that's not based on any reality in the first place. This guy's really trying not to let me stop this skill being activated. I could have avoided that by simply playing this first, and I should have just played that first. Okay. What do we want to do here? We can start by activating this, wiping out his spell cards. Just countering on top of countering. Then I think we could probably save everything else and just play quickly here through all of this. I'm gonna risk it and summon this out of order. It's too many cards. I definitely would like a more straightforward deck, but they just don't work at higher levels of gameplay in Yu-Gi-Oh! If I could just summon something with 2,500 attack points on the first turn, then attack, versus summoning something with 1,200 attack points and then attacking and then summoning, special summoning a 3,000 attack point with a counter. Or summoning 5 things. Heck, if I could get it down to just special summoning 3 things, that would be nice, but each of those special summons ends up in the graveyard and makes a higher chance of you summoning your other character. Moving on, a Spanish theme park is building an Uncharted roller coaster, which I guess you can theme a roller coaster based on anything. There's just a bunch of pictures of like the beginning of a construction here. So yeah, I guess that kind of makes sense. since Uncharted can only, in my mind, ever be described as a Tomb Raider ripoff, a Tomb Raider roller coaster would also make a decent amount of sense. Like, the themes are there, and Tomb Raider can really only be described as an Indiana Jones ripoff, so an Indiana Jones themed roller coaster also makes sense. Roller coasters really are one of those things that if there was an emperor of the world, you could make illegal, and you'd probably do more for society otherwise than allowing people to enjoy them, because there's just enough roller coaster accidents and minor injuries to outweigh the benefit of entertainment and the occasional kidney stone that gets displaced by people with kidney stones by going on roller coasters. And 2 more, so if we could get just like 1 or 2 quick victories here, we might actually be able to get to platinum. I did not expect to make it this far. Let's see. The Streets of Rage composer Yuzo Koshihiro is working on a new Mega Drive game. The shoot 'em up will be the first Mega Drive title in nearly 30 years. Obviously, this is going to be a gimmick, and almost certainly the game will be emulated way more than played on original hardware. Making a game within the limitations of the Mega Drive is almost certainly going to limit the level of quality of the game. So, yeah, I wouldn't expect a particularly long game or a particularly good game around those kinds of gimmicks, and the 2 things that we generally are always looking for in video games is that they are of a reasonable length and a reasonable amount of quality, and very possibly aren't going to get either of those in that case. We may be dangerously getting to a point where Japanese game creators, or game creators, I think Western American game creators have long since passed this point, but even Japanese game creators may be thinking of themselves too highly, like a composer in particular, thinking that the game will sell on his name may be a little bit too much of an ego trip. Speaking of other dangers in Japan, the latest birth rate numbers are lower than even the all-time low of last year, which they're probably fudging the numbers on that too. And at a certain point, if your population falls below a certain amount where you can't have healthy people even in your military, you're in real trouble. Although we may get to a point where robotic armies just are the standard thing, and you could have entire countries with less than 1 million people in it, and yet you could have a standing army of automated robots and missile launchers and bombs to protect a border. Yeah, Japan may get their Gundams after all, in reality, just in a need to protect themselves from being acquired by some other country, probably China. But I wouldn't completely eliminate Korea either, or any other country. Moving on, December's quote free games with Amazon Prime have been announced. 8 PC titles will be available to Prime subscribers at no extra charge next month. They're only showing 5 here. Let's see if we get a better list. Let's see. Quake Rose Riddle 2, which I don't think is that game. Werewolf Shadow. Never heard of Rose Riddle as a series. The Amazing American Circus, which is not there either. Banners of Ruin, which maybe is that game. And Brothers of Tale of Two Sons, which I've played that. That's pretty good. A game called Spinach I've never heard of. And a game called Desert Child and Doors Paradox. Here's Doors Paradox. So there's a fairly high number there. He summoned something for me. Interesting. Fairly high number of games there that I do not recognize. Let's see. And most of these games, like, I don't think there's been a specific Steam code released through the Amazon Prime Gaming in a very long time. They just aren't doing it that way anymore. So while I am grabbing these games, they tend to be on other platforms. And looking at the trailer of these different games, they're all fairly varied. They look like they are a lot of them that I don't recognize are small games. It's not really a category of games that I would describe as medium. So I'd say they look small. Do we have enough now? Yes, we do. This guy is trying real hard. And he did it. Something specifically about this card. Well, the win streak's over, but we were doing so well anyways that it's still worth it. We're seeing more and more of this, and this is quite shocking to me, and we're still looking at Video Game Chronicles articles. We've got two more. A Zelda veteran has joined a Chinese studio named Paper Games to make a new open-world adventure. Kentaro Tominaga has worked on every main console Zelda game since Wind Waker, which, that's probably not saying that much, really. That's to say he worked on Wind Waker, Skyward Sword, and Breath of the Wild, and like, did Majora's Mask come out after Wind Waker? I don't know if Majora's Mask did come out of Wind Waker, or was that before it? Because there definitely was Majora's Mask, and then there was a sequel to Majora's Mask that I couldn't even tell you the name of that. And those were the very weird Zelda games, outlier games, which main console games, like, that doesn't inherently, I think, mean that he probably worked on the Link's Awakening remake, even though that was on the main console too. It's very weird to potentially have a Japanese person go work for a Chinese company, or remotely work for a Chinese company, but it does seem like that is happening with more frequency. The problem, certainly from my biased perspective, or my experienced perspective, take it as you want, is that Paper Games is not a company I recognize. They probably haven't made any game before, and so they could make something very pretty in a trailer and then it could never come out. They could make something that looks really pretty but plays just like a Chinese RPG open world game that just has no real substance to it. Let's see. The story goes here. According to Dr. Serkin Toto, CEO of the Japanese game industry consultancy Cat and Games, he joined the developer Paper Games. So this is maybe somebody who would have some knowledge. Apparently, he's working on a mobile open world take on the mobile dress-up game Love Nikki. I have heard of Love Nikki, which was very much a dress-up girl-focused game. The new game, titled Infinity Nikki, is described by its developer as a cross-platform open-world dress-up adventure game. So there's still going to be a heavy emphasis on dressing up, but maybe now there's going to be more of a platforming. You've got to jump around to find the dress outfits. And the character here changed their outfit from blue to white to cast a spell on this this tree. Noticeably, so far, I have not seen them actually fight anybody, so there may just not be any real violence in the game, and instead there will just be platforming, switching, you switching of skills to get through different gates and different platforms. Right. Come on. I need to move faster if I'm going to try and win here. And if I'm going to start losing attention, then I need to stop playing. I always say I'm interested in a girl game, and girl games always seem like they are not existent or not very good, and this potentially looks like there's something like that. In the trailer, she just transferred herself into a fishing outfit and did some fishing. So there's also some bug catching in the game. Seems like at some point you may have to lead a bunch of ducks to water. She seems to have a mobile phone type device or tablet type device to switch her outfits. Maybe some cooking, maybe some magic, sci-fi UFO vehicle. An outfit that makes her big and like a dragon. Although she doesn't look like a dragon, it just makes her have a hoodie like a dragon. Looks like I saw just at the end here they're showing a couple of different enemies that you might have to fight, but not a lot of that. It definitely seems mostly platforming here. You know what, in a funny way, this game looks a lot like American McGee's Alice Madness Returns. If you take the crazy style and the Alice in Wonderland themes out, that's basically what Madness Returns was a bunch of platforming and some outfit switching. Well, I definitely didn't wake up this morning thinking I might be hyped around a Love Nikki open world game made by someone who worked on the Zelda games. But that's where we are here. This looks way more interesting in this trailer than you would have thought, or I would have thought. Open world dress up adventure. That may be a whole new thing. I do have a thought, and maybe there's not a lot of evidence on this thought, that Um, probably need to play, if I'm going to play anymore, I probably need to just play off screen and focus on the news. This will be our last game. I do have a bit of a concern and thought certainly around where Zelda is going in the future, and it's very possible that this guy left working for Nintendo and making Zelda games because he was no longer needed or no longer enthusiastic around the direction that the potential future Zelda games go. So hopefully one would hope that he actually is just more encouraged by this Nike project. Or maybe he just got a better offer. You don't hear a lot of stories of doting Japanese fathers, of daughters or sons. In fact, the stereotype is almost always in anime that the Japanese father is completely absent, always working, or completely demanding and just a total jerk. I suppose in Bleach, the father is a doting father over his daughters, perhaps not so much on the son. But yeah, I'd say the Bleach father is really the exception, not the rule. So I wouldn't really assume that the Zelda developer had a daughter and was doting on his daughter, or realized the daughter doesn't have any female-centric games that would be age appropriate, and that would have been the reason why he would have wanted to work on Infinity Nikki. Probably made a mistake there, but I think we can potentially work with that. This last Video Games Chronicle article is just a bookmarked article. It's a Let's Play, see how Front Mission's first remake caters both to existing fans and newcomers. This is obviously a bookmarked sponsored content, not actually news article. So then we can jump to Gametsu articles. Settlers New Allies launches February 17th, 2023 for PC, and later on the PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and Luna. Noticeably not the PS5 and not the Xbox Series. So fairly late to do these mid-generation or old generation consoles. Bandai Namco has trademarked Fire of Rubicon, and Capcom has trademarked Capcom Box. I think we had already talked about that in the previous stream. Let's see. You don't really need to talk about the Mario movie anymore. Nintendo Switch Sports has updated to version 1.3.0, which adds golf now. Yeah, I'm definitely not paying attention, and I've exhausted myself today. I also didn't really eat enough, so now I'm really hungry. Now, with these new drawers I added to my side tables, I moved side tables and now they have drawers. Probably wouldn't be the worst idea to have some kind of crackers or snacks there. Of course, doesn't really help anything if I'm trying to talk and I'm choking on crackers or chomping down on snacks. As just another thing that definitely makes me less likely to ever try to stream for long amounts of time. Just gonna try and have a pretty big chain here so we can destroy this. And I'm gonna banish this card. Because I think I'm fairly safe here. Nope, I guess I should have banished the other card. Well, that sucks. Yeah, I guess I don't have much to say about golf. Like, Wii Sports Golf being added so late is kind of ridiculous. They definitely didn't release this game as a finished product, and they are instead trying to turn it into what I can only assume is Nintendo's idea of a continuing live service game when it really isn't. Meanwhile, a much more live service game like Splatoon 3 is at version 2.0, launching November 29th, which I guess was yesterday, with new modes, stages, items, and more, which I'm sure of the people playing Splatoon 3, they'll like the new content. There's quite a long list of fixed issues and such here. It's a 2.0 update does definitely imply something more. I guess I could have activated that and done something more too there, but nope. I'm not playing particularly well. I can definitely feel my eyes glaze over and my attention span drying up. An Umi deck. What's this card really? Sea Stealth 2. Alright, well. Seems like they're gonna drag this out as long as possible. A game called Mato Anomalies launches March 10th, seemingly for everything except for things like Luna, and for consoles and PC, I guess is a better way to phrase that. Looking at the screenshots though, I'd have a hard time telling you what this game is even about. And then looking at a trailer, I think implies that it might be a card game with some interesting visual novel, comic book cutscenes. It also kind of feels like it might be somewhat like a Persona game, in that you're doing dungeon crawling. See if we can special summon something else. See, will that trigger this other one's ability? I don't know. Let's get rid of this. And then would there be any reason to something else? Let's just go with this, this, this. We won, but we certainly paid a lot. And that took a lot of time and a lot of energy to win, and that drained me mentally to get that victory. And I still would need 2 more victories, and I guess I'll just play those off screen. I cannot see myself doing any more of that. And uniquely, we really didn't make a lot of progress on the new daily quests. Alright. So let's start going through the Gamathu articles. Fairly quickly, I'm going to try and burn through the rest of this news. Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion launch trailer and gameplay is available if you want to check that out. I imagine some people will. Terror of Hemosaurus has been delayed to December 7th for the PS5 and PS4, December 9th for the Series and Xbox One, and January 12th for the Switch. This is that, oh man, Rampage clone. The game is called Rampage, and I've seen several clones, and I've hoped for more Rampage clones because there hasn't been enough of them and enough good ones. But I always have the problem of forgetting what the game's name is. It's called Rampage. The game called Fahrenheit 213, which is actually a fairly low temperature, I would imagine. But maybe not. 213 was still... Actually, no, that would be really, really hot still. Is going to announce a debut game at the Indie Live Expo in 2022. I don't get the Fahrenheit 213 or 213. Yeah, I don't know what specifically that temperature means. Moving on, Atelier Ryza 3, Alchemist of the End and the Secret Keys details the keys and evolved synthesis system. If you're interested in checking out that, I imagine if you liked Atelier Ryza 1 and 2, the third game is a no duh. But if you're actually interested in Atelier Ryza and haven't played 1 and 2, you probably should play 1 and 2. I include myself in that advice. I should probably play Atelier Ryza 1 and 2. A game called World Championship Boxing Manager 2 for PC launches January 17th, 2023. Console versions due out later. The question here, this is probably a management game, and you don't ever get to control the characters in the ring. I did see a YouTuber proposing that the Switch make a new Punch-Out game. They're also proposing to make a new F-Zero game, but that'll never happen. At least that's what the YouTuber said. And I would tend to agree. Yeah, the Switch has the Joy-Cons, at least the original versions of the Switch have Joy-Cons, so making a new Punch-Out game does make sense. It always makes more sense to either port the older games and just do a slight remaster or make a new one. It's not that difficult of a game concept. A game called Dragon Ball Games Battle Hour 2023 has been announced. This might be several Dragon Ball games being announced at the same time, considering how many Dragon Ball games have been released in the past. Featured games for 2023 event include Dragon Ball FighterZ, Dragon Ball Supercard, and Dragon Ball Legends. So that's 3 Dragon Ball games they're going to talk about at least. And I guess they probably are still adding content to FighterZ. 2 Point Campus DLC Space Academy has been announced. Which, yeah, I guess. 2 Points Campus, the sequel to 2 Points Hospital, is still doing well enough. A game called The Garden Path launches in spring of 2023. What kind of game is this? They're calling it a simulation game. That doesn't make the most sense. Is this a flower picking game? Seems like you kind of walk around and talk to weird looking creatures in this weird art style. Xbox Live Gold free games for December have been announced. We already talked about that, so we don't need to cover it again. PlayStation tournaments for PS5 are now available. You can now seamlessly sign up. Well, they've added seamless sign up, new user interface, real-time matches, and more. If I had more time, I'd investigate this a little bit further, because that is something that's fairly intriguing. As far as Xbox Live and PlayStation Network, they really haven't added a bunch of features in the past 4 or 5 years. The idea of potentially forming a tournament amongst friends or a tournament amongst random strangers and seeing how that played out is potentially a social event you could certainly have. Certainly we can see here that they are focusing this heavily around sports and bracket tournaments. Now, I don't know if anybody can make their own tournament and that the storefronts would get, PlayStation would get flooded with tournaments, or if PlayStation employees are creating the tournaments and then you can sign up and join them. Either way would be a nice feature, certainly. Honestly, adding tournaments as a feature probably would work very nicely as a way of putting some kids in their place too, because I imagine there's a lot of kids out there that play games on easy and think they are professional level gamers and that they can do no wrong, when if they started to see even the slightest bit of competition against other kids and other gamers in general, and adult gamers also competing, they would realize, oh, actually I'm not that good at games, so I shouldn't have that big ego. Little kids in general tend to very easily have big egos, and it's better that a kid have a big ego than have a little ego, because they need that confidence and that support until the real world smacks them in the face about college time. Let's see. The game Synced adds a console version, and a PC open beta test is set for December 9th to January 15th. Moving through these Gematsu articles. Gotham Knights free update is now available. It adds a co-op mode called Heroic Assault and Showdown, which both of those feel very much like they are just not much of anything. Noticeably, they are adding new content instead of potentially trying to fix the kind of bugginess of Gotham Knights, which is probably unfixable if I was to guess, or not worth fixing. It says you face off of enemies and complete challenges across 30 floors. Even if they did fix all the bugs, adding new content to Gotham Knights in its own separate aspect is probably not what needs to happen. They need to add content to the main game and go, and tell people there's a completely different from the beginning experience now, which is almost approaching making a whole new game. A game called Below Steelbook Edition for PS4 has been announced. Check that out on Gamatsu if you're interested. Grime for the PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One launches December 15th alongside free DLC Colors of Rot. Hindsight is coming to the PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, and Xbox One on December 6th. It's currently available for the Switch and PC and iOS. Hindsight, I think, is more of a emotional visual experience. Yep. These are the kind of games I'd like to check out, but they often don't feel like they have very much of a gameplay mechanic. There was one where you were doing platforming, and then it was also going through the memories of this woman that came out a couple years ago, and yeah, I saw some people say something nice about it, but then it may have been a PlayStation exclusive and never come out to anything else, and it didn't seem like it sold particularly well or got much coverage. Far Cry 6 DLC Lost Between Worlds launches 6 plus a new Game Plus update, which I never understand why you would delay a new Game Plus update. Why that wouldn't be in the game day one for people who would actually love the game and want to play it. Also, a free trial is now available. This is an all new Danny Rojas story. I don't think that's going to particularly work or sell well, just because I don't think too many people actually cared about Far Cry 6. Unless I'm completely confused, Far Cry 6's main story has nothing to do with this DLC and does not really involve this character or this lady and aliens. What I think Far Cry 6's main story is kind of that Spanish dictator character who's barely in the game. So this is again trying to do like Far Cry Red Dragon or whatever it was called, where there's just DLC that's just totally different and totally out there, made by very possibly a completely different team on the same engine. In a lot of ways, this looks like this could have just been labeled Prey, as in the original Prey series, instead of the new game that they called Prey, and it would have made more sense. Or this could have just been named something completely new. Seems like the guns may have to swap between being red and blue, almost like the Ikaruga concept. Well, one thing I will say is that this trailer is more intriguing just because it's weird than all the trailers I saw for Far Cry 6. Like, as far as what the main game looks like. Did they release a Far Cry 6 and I just don't even recognize it? Because maybe I'm thinking of Far Cry 5 with the Spanish dictator and the sun. Because this footage also doesn't really look like what they were teasing and showing in Far Cry 6. But I guess they never really showed the protagonist in the teasers, or I never saw the protagonist in the teasers for Far Cry 6, so maybe this lady is the protagonist and they was just hiding it. Yeah, I guess I wouldn't be surprised if they were potentially hiding the lady as a main character because they were afraid of some kind of pushback or controversy. Yeah, this looks like This looks much closer to what I suspect the main game is. Yeah, no, this is the characters here that they were showing, really emphasizing as far as the main characters of Far Cry 6, and they really aren't the main characters, they're just the bad guy characters. Well, that really just highlights how much brand confusion the Far Cry series has, though, that I can't be for certain. I can't even be certain what I know about the Far Cry games, and I can't really tell you what the connecting thread between different Far Cry games are, or which Far Cry games are really worth playing. Generally, I suspect you should probably play Far Cry 3, and that's probably it. But I could actually be thinking about 4 for all I know. We already talked about the Mario trailer. I don't think there's anything more to say. It would be slightly interesting if the Japanese trailer was different. If we looked here at the thumbnail, it seems to me like it's probably the exact same visual footage. Like, I doubt they would change much in this art style. But the dialogue will be slightly different in different languages, obviously. Moving on, MechWarrior 5 Mercenaries DLC Rise of Rashog, Rasselhag, I guess, has been announced. A open world dress up adventure game called Infinity Nike has been announced for the PS5, for PC, iOS, and Android from the Chinese developer Paper Games. Yeah, and that really is the surprise of the month, really, if not several months, to have Infinity Nike or Love Nike spin-offs be announced for consoles, and for it to actually look like it might be something that's particularly good. It could be fairly short, though, and it could be full of microtransactions. I think Love Nike is fairly full of microtransactions. It's also nice, certainly, to have like a dress-up game that feels like it's for little girls, to balance out so many games that are either completely missing female characters or any femininity to them, or they're going for more of a lewd exploitation twist, in such as Samurai Maiden. Not that I would ever censor anybody if they want to make a lewd exploitative or type game for female characters or male characters, but yeah, the skimpy clothing anime girls games are way more common than the little girl anime girl games. And in the case of Samurai Maiden, with this launch trailer, we have seen fairly consistently that this is a game that is going to be somewhat in the mushy middle, in that it's not going to show what people probably want as far as the nudity aspects, and so it's now going to potentially have to actually be a good game and play well to catch an audience, because it's not going the Senran Kagura route where it's particularly explicit. There's implied lesbian romances in this game, not overt lesbian interactions. Moving on, Disgaea 4, Promise Revisited, is now available for iOS and Android. I could definitely see the Disgaea series doing better on cell phones than consoles, because it is such a long procedural placement, strategy placement RPG game. I still don't see myself ever trying to play Disgaea again, though. It was just way too slow and way too long. Not my type of game, really. Famitsu review scores for issue 1774 are out. I don't know why River City Girls Ransom here would be the screenshot to use, though. I guess River City Girls 2 did come out. Interesting. Unfortunately, it's 29 out of 40, so it's not being particularly well received. I would have to do some research to see what River City Girls 1 got from Famitsu, but in general, I thought people really liked River City Girls 1. But very possibly they rushed out 2, and there just wasn't that much pent-up demand to have a sequel. It Takes Two, being released on the Switch, gets 35 out of 40, so that is quite high praise. Tomomi for the Switch gets 30 out of 40, which is pretty low. And then Mario & Rabbids Sparks of Hope is 33 out of 40, which is about average. The Mario & Rabbids game, or Mario Plus Rabbids series, has me a little confused, frankly, as to how many games have been released. Whether Sparks of Hope is the second game in the series or the third, I honestly do not know. Moving on, Ace Angler Fishing Spirits M is now available for iOS and Android, which I feel like this was a Switch game originally. It was previously available for arcades and Switch, yeah. And now they've brought it to mobile, which, yeah, has a fishing game on mobile that might find a small niche audience outside of Japan or inside of Japan. Apparently it's a part coin game series too, so it might be, if you were playing it in the arcade, a way to win coins back, or tokens, or quarters, or even tickets. It's moving on. The 13th month for PC launches December 2nd. It's a dark fantasy visual novel, redated after several months delay. Several months delay obviously is more than enough to make me forget this game if I saw its announcements originally, because I do not recognize this game at all. And this screenshot of two, I assume, girls lying in bed doesn't seem like it really tells me much. Let's see. RPG Maker Unite has been delayed to spring of 2023, due out first via the Unity Assets Store. This is not so much, I think, a game as it is a engine to make RPG Maker style games that look a little bit better. But generally, I'm still of the opinion that I'd like to see RPG Maker become much more exclusive or go away altogether, because RPG Maker themselves have been behind a lot of garbage asset flip games, in that they enabled people who don't really have the skill or desire to make good games the ability to make games and try and sell them on Steam. It wouldn't be a terrible time, if Valve isn't already doing this, for Steam to make you tell them what engine your game is made on, and then they could at least start to think about saying, hey, no more RPG Maker games, or at least put some more scrutiny to RPG Maker games. Moving on, Record of the Argus War for Switch has a limited edition being announced here. Seems like it comes with quite a few little extras, but I imagine this might be, it's art book bromide cards. Is that what these are called? These little pencil boards is what I've heard them called as. Diorama is this, so there's like 3 different layers here in a diorama. An original soundtrack, I would assume, is this. So this is the art book, this is the game, this is the overall box that would hold everything. I guess they're calling them bromide cards now. I'm gonna have to look up what bromide means. Well, calling them pencil boards didn't make any sense either when they were called that. Basically, they're just kind of thick cardstock posters, but too small to be real posters, even in a small Japanese apartment. A game called Goodbye Volcano High has been delayed to summer of 2023, and they've released a teaser trailer. Looking at the screenshot, I'm not particularly enthusiastic about this game with its anthropomorphic creatures, but there might be something in it that would convince me to think about playing the game. Labyrinth of Galleria, the Moon Society, has a gameplay trailer if you want to check that out on Gamatsu. Cyberhook is coming to the PS4 on December 9th. Dark adventure game Children of Silencetown launches January 11th, and then for the PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC, January 11th, 2023. Tales of Symphonia Remastered has a story trailer if you want to check that out. We have just 2 more Gamatsu articles. Shirone the Dragon Girl is coming to PS4 on December 1st. It's currently available for the Switch and PC. So let's head over to its Steam page and just see where this game is. 3D adventure game where you solve puzzles. Why is this not on the follow list? And why is this not on the wish list? Yep, that's increasingly sad every time I hear about a game coming out to consoles to then find out that there was a Steam game that I somehow missed. This was March 9th of 2022 that this would have been released. I could certainly see, looking at the screenshot, maybe dismissing this, and inherently some of these games will just not have relevancy in the first couple of months, and then they might be good enough to get a console release, and then there might be some relevancy around the game because they have a console release. This doesn't particularly look amazing as a game, so I could see myself just ignoring it even now. And then finally, the game Shredders is coming to the PS5 on December 6th. It's currently available for Xbox Series and PC. And this too came out March 16th. And this too is not on a wish list or follow list. Yep. I definitely was just not doing the greatest of jobs. Well, this sucks. This game, Deepening Fire, looks very interesting, and yet it's mixed reviewed as an early access game. So I can bend over backwards and be very generous and put it on the follow list, but I can't really justify giving it a YouTube short, and I definitely can't justify putting it on the wish list at the moment. It's probably shouldn't even be on the follow list. Right, we are now, in case you're not following, going through all of the games that came out on Steam in the past couple days. I'm going to put this on the follow list, but I suspect this isn't enough of a game to be worth playing. Ideally, since we're running late, this is going to be the first time in a fairly long time that we are going to have a 3-hour and 30-minute, 4-hour stream. I would like to see most of these games just be garbage so I can dismiss them very easily. If there's anything that possibly would be good, I guess I'd probably just throw it on the fall list and not try to agonize over it too much. I think this one we can dismiss still, like I'm gonna put this on the fall list just in case. Although, you know, hoping all the games that came out on Steam are just garbage is not really what I should be hoping for, because then that just means there's no good games coming out, and that means then there's no YouTube shorts. I'll give this one a YouTube short because it's weird looking, and then if there are no YouTube shorts, then I can't potentially get more views, which I really would like more views. This one's more of a prologue, isn't it? Should I do YouTube Shorts on prologues? Not at the moment, but I may revisit that decision fairly quickly as I potentially try to push towards even a third YouTube Short every day. Inherently, I think there's just going to be a level of inconsistency on the YouTube Shorts too. Some are going to get 200 or 300 views, if not more, but some are just going to straight up have no views. A slot machine game. That doesn't look terrible. I've always wanted a non-gambling slot machine type simulator game, and I've just never really found one. There really has become a pattern now with these horror games in which they show a door at the bottom of the stairs, like from PT, and creepy outsides, creepy closets, creepy hallways. It's just like, almost feels like there's a checklist now as far as what the screenshots should look like, and it's becoming perhaps too formulaic for its own good. The listings of games on Steam are fairly formulaic anyways, and there is just a lot of copying. Notice today is Wednesday, and so far we have we have not seen any adult games at all, which I suspect might be some bundling happening. This fighting game probably isn't anything, but it's an interesting idea, certainly, to have a ninja girl, Western people. Yeah, quite the collection of what are probably asset flip fighting games, Mortal Kombat clone. And you really would have to do something like this if you were going to try and make a Mortal Kombat clone. Is just try to buy pre-rendered assets, even if you were trying to make a good fighting game. There we go, our first adult game. Virtua Mate plus VAMX. I don't know what VAMX is. This is a VR adult game with 3D natural color tones. That being said, there is a screenshot here of what looks like a deer fawn, anthropomorphic deer fawn girl, and I'm not sure if the guy engaging with this anthropomorphic deer fawn girl is human. He looks human, so this straight up is just bestiality, it looks like. There's a lot of really bad screenshots here and inconsistency in the visuals. There's a lot of variety in what they're trying to show too, but I don't know if any of it's really trustworthy. It feels very asset flippy. There's quite a lot of screenshots too. Usually you have like 5, 10, 15 screenshots. Here they are showing, I'd say 20 or 30. It's selling for $35.99. It supports English, allegedly with full audio. I think the general idea here is that this is a sandbox. Yeah, it says it's a sandbox creator where you just take the asset flips and create it. So at that price, maybe there is an argument for it, but I don't think there really is. VAMX is the name of the publisher, it looks like. And see, at a certain level, I question whether those kinds of simulator games are then used to create the cheaper, more visual novel kinetic stories. At a certain level, I know that pretty much all of the images are asset flips, for lack of a better term. This is interesting because this is a Mega Man clone based on the Kikomi Kikomono Friends project, but is it licensed at all? I mean, does it have to be licensed? Inherently, this doesn't make a lot of sense, but I'll give it a follow because the Kimono Friends characters are definitely not drawn like this, and they, I think, are not really into fighting or platforming in any way. This feels more like something that should have been a fan mod of an existing Mega Man game and not sold on Steam or put on Steam for free, I guess. I'm gonna give this a follow, but not a YouTube short just because it's ugly. I guess since we saw one adult game, there's a chance of seeing some other adult games. Right now, the scales for several weeks now have been fairly balanced as far as the natural skin tone that you would assume a Western developer would develop versus the more bright and colored anime styles of games as far as adult games go. And yeah, a 50-50 split doesn't feel right, but it might actually be right. This is a Korean only game and does not look particularly interesting. Like, I definitely would have leaned heavily into the assumption that there would be a lot more Japanese adult games getting made on a weekly basis than Western adult games. But that at that point, I also would never have assumed that any of the cheap, low effort 3D CGI Western adult games were getting listed on Steam in the first place at all. Does this look good enough? English and French. Again, I guess maybe I'll just give it a follow and not bother with the decision. Don't bother with the YouTube short. And so, what my assumptions are fairly wrong, obviously, or fairly wrong. So now I'm just trying to slowly establish a new normal as far as what I'd expect as the new normal. And certainly what I mean by when I say the new normal there is almost certainly not what most people's normal is, because most people aren't looking at every single game coming out on Steam, and most people are living in a more censored, puritanical world that is not going to highlight adult content. Cyberpunk social deduction game. Is this a online PvP game? Yes, it is. So, interesting idea, but not something that I could potentially play. But I will give it a YouTube short. It's basically almost like a dating game. It is actually, I suppose, pretty shocking that there aren't more dating games in existence, or really any dating games in existence. It would make a lot of sense for sites like Match.com to have a whole gaming section where you play get to know you style games from the idea of dating, or for those kinds of games to exist in general. Elevator Action returns as tribute. I think this probably has some relevancy to it. This definitely isn't the first Elevator Action game, though. This is like a remake of a continuation sequel of a game. Man. What I really need to do is figure out a shortcut. And honestly, I should probably stop using the kind of mouse I have and get a mouse with some more buttons on it on the side instead of just a zoom in and zoom out. Because if I had a button on the side of my mouse that I could program to just say next tab or close tab, I could have the mouse here in this lower corner section clicking forward on the screenshots, and then click the button instead of having to move all the way 1080p 1080 pixels up and down. This is definitely a first world problem, certainly, but I'm actually feeling it too. Just constantly doing that does exhaust my fingers or my wrists. After a couple hours of also playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Another farm roguelike. Well, if you're gonna not even have a decent name for your game, I think we could probably say no, but frankly the ratings have to speak for themselves too. There. Let's see. Mind Works, the greatest division. We're still seeing some VR games, but I'm still not particularly interested in VR games. Although arguably this might be a better military first-person shooter VR game in a field where there really aren't that many military first-person shooter VR games. We're almost through all the games that came out on Steam. At a certain point, maybe the follow-list cleanup should be skipped, but there's not a good way to do that. Well, is this game an adult content game? Apparently so. That one caught me, as I wasn't expecting that. Like, this Elf Girl Pinball is a flat, colorful / anime, bright and colorful game, and yeah, it feels a little high energy in its video animation and fairly high energy in the characters bouncing around. So I guess the general gimmick is parts of the elf girls are part of the pinball tables. So you're hitting parts of the elf girls, boobs, butts, genitals, things like that. Kind of like Senran and Kagura pinball, except for they are more life-size, it seems, and much more explicit. Also seems like you see the back of the pinball table, so the other parts of the girls are also being interacted with while you're playing the pinball tables. The pinball tables themselves do not look particularly that good. They are very simplistic pinball tables, so I would not say Elf Girl Pinball is a good sale if you want to play pinball. It's selling for $8.99. It supports English, Japanese, and Chinese in the interface. Nothing else. No full audio, no subtitles being promised, which better probably for that. This looks interesting, certainly. So I'm going to put it on the follow list. Obviously, I can't do a YouTube short on it. And honestly, if it got on the wish list and somebody gifted it to me, which is probably the only way I'd ever own it, I don't really think I could do much with the game anyways. Yeah, apparently there are times when you can flip the game around and turn it into almost like an Arkanoid game and be on the back side of it. There is also seemingly just a straight up sex mini game in it also. But the animations between what looks like two different elf girls, or nope, three. There's a blonde, redhead, and a blue-haired girl. It seems the animation seems to be very, very high, very polished. It is kind of a different animation style too. I wish I could better describe it than that. So yeah, I don't know how you would better describe it. Then it seems like there's an actual artist behind it that has an actual unique style of his own instead of just something that is very generic. Anyways, that's my 1,000 words for an adult game that a single picture could have probably described if I could show it. Blue Oak Bridge looks interesting, so I'll put that on the follow list and give it a YouTube short. And I guess the scales are once again balanced. We had a 3D CGI natural color tone, more Western adult game, and then we had a flat 2D, although it was kind of 3D, it really wasn't. I would definitely call it more of a flat 2D colorful anime adult game. It's only 2 adult games, but it is 2 adult games getting released on Steam in the middle of the week, which is more than I expected, really. This looks too much like a Game Boy game to really interest me, but I don't want to make any decisions right now, so I'm gonna just give it a follow in a YouTube short. Same could be said about this. I probably shouldn't even give that a follow. And then we can dismiss this. So that's it for those games. And then we're at the GameDeveloper.com articles. Red Dead Redemption 2 reached an all-time high player count on the PC thanks to the Steam current autumn sale. I didn't even see Red Dead Redemption 2 advertised to me, so I don't know if it was particularly even discounted, or if it isn't just a case that these sales get people playing games, even if it's games they already own, more. And at a certain level, if that's the only thing that Steam sales do is that it gets gamers to play more games, I'm sure Valve would consider that a massive success in itself. Let's see. Avalanche Studios is apparently investigating its hiring practices after a year of staff complaints. I said it to everyone on Thursday, and I'm saying it again today. We effed up. What specifically was wrong with their what is the controversy, or what is the problem here? It says they're investigating our hiring practices after a controversial hire left staff feeling vulnerable, frustrated, and voiceless. Honestly, at a certain level, employees probably should recognize that they are vulnerable, frustrated, and voiceless as far as hiring things. Even in families, you don't get to pick who your siblings, who your brother marries, who your sister marries, things like that. People come into the families, and then you just have to live with them. And if you have a crazy brother that marries a crazy woman that turns out to be an axe murderer, you still don't really have much of a say there. You are vulnerable, you probably will be frustrated, and you will be voiceless in that scenario. It is 100-fold more true in a business that you have no say in the hiring procedures, or who gets hired and who stays around. You can certainly say it's me or them and walk. You can quit, certainly, and I don't think anybody's gonna really be held to a contract as an employee if you did quit because some crazy person who gets hired at a job. You certainly see that with Twitter too, is that Elon Musk becomes the CEO. A bunch of people don't want to work for Elon Musk, so they quit, or they get fired, or they are desperately trying to find another job in the meantime. What's the real story here, though? Avalanche hired a high-level employee who had been publicly accused of behaving inappropriately towards women at their former workplace, which is to say no innocence until proven guilty. How much vetting does a company really need to do? Probably companies, for their own safety and for the risk of causing 5 people to leave by hiring 1 person, you should vet people fairly well. Look at what comes up when you Google their names, look at their social media profiles, things like that, if they're public, what they've said in public. But also, a lot of this just screams cancel culture on the face of it. While some employees attempted to voice their concerns about the situation, which the HR reportedly refused to open the dialogue and dismissed staff seeking more information about the company's hiring processes, ignoring calls for transparency, which HR is never transparent at all. Like, at a certain level, either HR is doing their job or they're not. Like, they're protecting the company from lawsuits and dangers, and they've done the investigation and hired the person anyways, or HR dropped the ball and they hired somebody who really is potentially a danger to the company. But yeah, a lot of this without any evidence and details, and I'm just going to skip the rest of this because this does seem a little just cancel culture-y. Without actual details, without actual evidence, it's really just going to boil down to he said, she said type stuff. And companies can hire anybody they want, and employees that don't like it can quit. It's sad. It says that that's the case. The truth of the matter is, you fix this really way better by introducing something like universal basic income and stop making people dependent on working jobs in the first place to feed themselves, to meet their basic needs, to have their basic health care taken care of. You can't fix these problems universally by fixing just Avalanche Studios. These kinds of problems are only fixed with much bigger changes. It speaks to probably bad leadership if you didn't know how your employees felt and didn't realize that hiring a certain employee might cause controversy. But yeah, I guess I'll leave it at that since we're already going late. Let's see. Australia has introduced a new bill to age gate loot boxes. I wouldn't be surprised if that passes. They don't want to wholly eliminate loot boxes, but restrict the gaming feature to players aged 18 and up, which very possibly would wholly eliminate loot boxes for a lot of games, and more's the better. I think that probably would help a lot of people, both under and over the age of 18. Let's see. Apex Legends and Inscription headline Apple's App Store Awards. I guess we're not getting a full list here of who won. But yeah. Does the Apple App Store Awards mean anything? I would say probably not. It's probably just things Apple like that sell particularly well. I don't know how many gamers are particularly even playing games on the Apple apps, iOS and Apple iPhones. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if there were more gamers on Android, even though there are more users on iPhones and Apple products. Sony launched this motion tracking bands for VR and mocap use, but did it seemingly with no fanfare at all, and I question if this is Sony Interactive Entertainment or if this is a different division of Sony that released this. Looking at the screenshot, it seems like you have a band for your wrist that's pink, and a band for your wrist here that's pink, and then maybe a headband, it seems like that's the case, for head tracking, and then these bands for your legs that are yellow, which this potentially could be the state of future. The question really comes down to, are these motion tracking with any kind of electronics in them? If they do have electronics, is this whole set really expensive? Are you paying $50 to $100 for each band or each set of bands? And just how many different games are really going to be programmed to work with that? Real mocap people in a real mocap studio are not going to use this technology. If there's no technology in it and it is just something that a camera has to see, then that doesn't work compared to real mocapping, where you would have a room encircled by cameras taking pictures at somewhere around 500 frames per second, so that you capture as much detail as possible and see the mocap points even if it's being blocked by somebody else. Which that's really where you're going to run into problems with mocap, is when you have two people in the scene and one person is blocking half of the points there. Let's see if we can... It's in Japan only, which very possibly this highlights where Sony of Japan is focused. It will free VTubers and creators involved in movie and animation production. Yeah, this definitely doesn't feel like this is Sony PlayStation division. This feels like this is a different division. Right. So it seems like there is some electronics to it. It seems like you get a set of 6 that I'd imagine they have something akin to an ESP32 type circuit in them, doing an XYZ and acceleration data sending. I assume that all of this has to then connect wirelessly to an app. It seems like it might even be a cell phone app. Yeah. And then you strap yourself in, sticking one behind your back. Yep. And then you have a cell phone app where you have your guy. Now the joke here is always that every single VTuber you see is probably being done either by a guy, even though the VTube character is a cutesy anime girl, or it's being done by an old ugly lady depicting herself as a cutesy anime girl. It doesn't look terrible in this demo, but also doesn't look amazingly useful either. At the end of the day, most VTubers are doing much more of a face cam experience. They're not doing dance routines. So this really doesn't help most people who are just doing face cam. And yeah, at the end there it just said Sony. That's not the PlayStation logo. And you're not really going to do real animation with that. Like, it's probably not going to work very well as far as animation. I guess maybe you could work from home and do some kind of motion animation to give a general idea of what it's supposed to look like, but then you would have to probably import any of that data or export that data from the mocappy software, whatever it is, to something like Blender, and it would just give you a general rough idea of what you would want to see. And that certainly could be helpful at the beginning of development. Noticeably here, doesn't seem like they're even trying to integrate any kind of gameplay into it, because you could do some kind of exercise yoga type game around that idea. I bet these are incredibly expensive. Yeah, $358 US dollars or so. But yeah, I guess if you had a writer or director working from home and they said, I want the characters to kind of move like this, and then they sent that footage to the real animators, and then the real animators mocapped it using a real mocap studio or animated it by hand, there might be some value in that. And at $400 or so, that's not a lot of money if you're in the industry for $1 million movie production, but it's a ton of money if you're just trying to be a VTuber, particularly a VTuber who's all about moving around and dancing. Noticeably here, there's no face camera capture option, and there's no dots on your face to get different emotions, so you're still going to have a very dead-eyed character even if you mocap these 5 points. I wouldn't be surprised if the software is doing a lot of cheating too, and having the character smile and wink and nod and just generally move, making a bunch of in-between frames that aren't actually captured motion. Moving on, Wildlife Studio has confirmed layoffs and canceled all non-mobile projects. I'm not sure I know of any game made by Wildlife Studios, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we hear more of this as recession continues to lock in. Honestly, I feel like I've spent more of my life in a recession than I've been out of a recession, which I guess probably is the case. Victoria 3 sells 500,000 copies to become one of Paradox's most successful launches. Sorry, up and wrap up. Sony launches PlayStation tournaments on the PS5 to hype competitive play. Yep, I would like to investigate that more still. And then we've got some fall list cleanup stuff there. Afterlife VR, rated very positively. I will leave that on the fall list because it's a VR game. After the First Station from 2021. There's only 3 user reviews, so I think we have to say no to this. It's kind of pretty, but it doesn't seem like there's much of a game here. One day I may become big enough where I start to look at these smaller games with no coverage and just roll the dice on covering those games, but at the moment that doesn't make any sense. After the Fall looks like a particularly good game, but it is a VR game, so yeah. And remember, my plans are, if I get to the Z's on the fall list, after that point I'm probably going to start getting rid of VR games and just admitting to myself that by the time I start to think about a VR game collection, VR will have changed so much that I would just have to reevaluate. This game is not relevant because it doesn't have enough reviews, and it's not well reviewed for the reviews it does have, which is a shame because it looked kind of interesting. This is from March, and I could probably just say no already to this game. But I'll give it more time just because I don't want to make a decision. This one will take off since it's 2021. Eternian Noctis. It's rated very positively, so we'll put that on the wish list. Airy, Last Day on Earth. Needs more time. Some of these games are definitely games that were added fairly recently. even airy Dreamscape, which, yeah, there are 2 airy games, aren't there? Needs more time, and it's from January. And airy Calm Mind. Oh, I think there's arguably a point here where they are just selling the same game over and over again, and at $10 each, that seems like a lot of money. But maybe it is actually worth playing. As far as the bird simulator games out there, it probably isn't. It's probably just asset flippy. Alright, well, let's come over here and start the Duel live. And then I'm going to scroll down my Twitter feed, make sure there's not any new news, and then I'm going to call the stream. I would like to do some pre-recorded footage recording later today, but I should definitely instead play Yu-Gi-Oh! And try and get to Platinum, because playing a little bit more today and getting to Platinum will save me probably hours. Hours next month. GameDeveloper.com has an article here that says Bethesda is developing another mobile game, according to Todd Howard. That's dumb. And if there ever was a point for Microsoft to potentially cancel a project, that would be the time. Is this really more of a question of Todd Howard shooting his mouth off? I don't know. But yeah, I would not, as Microsoft, look towards Bethesda to make any more mobile games. Even if they were going to try to get into the mobile game concept. That being said, there is a slight talk that Microsoft may be trying to make their own app store to compete with the Apple App Store and the Google Play App Store. So maybe that would be why they were working on a mobile game. Apparently, Gameloft has delayed the Disney Speedstorm release from this year to 2023. I don't even remember the announcement of Disney Speedstorm. A full list of confirmed and rumored world premieres, presenters, and performances for the Game Awards is available at Komatsu. That was an hour ago, so kind of doesn't matter though. That's announcements for announcements. Netflix seems to be promoting Dragon Age Absolution Episode 1. Maybe that's going to be released in episodic forms. Warner Brothers is promoting Hogwarts Legacy. So, yep, they're still hoping that there's some level of success there for the game that's not even out yet. Feels like we kind of had a pretty big boost here also in the monthly battle pass. So still kind of a lot of this that needs to be played. But we've got 57 days to get to level 100, and there's no benefit after level 100. It would be nicer, certainly, if there was just an infinite amount of rewards after level 100 to give you 50 more crystals. But no such luck. Let's continue to scroll down. Let's see if there's anything else. This is certainly part of the problem of streaming for particularly long is that new news may come out, and then you're looking at the Twitter feed. Sega plans to release 3 free Sonic Frontier DLCs in 2023, including new story content and playable characters. Honestly, I feel like I'm probably gonna just fall asleep. Yeah, I drank a 5-hour energy drink a couple days ago to try to stay awake all day, and it seems like it's really only gonna keep my circadian rhythm in check. For a couple of days, and I'm already back to the idea of taking a nap in the middle of the day. Yeah. Of all the medical technology I'd potentially like to see made, if there was just a device that would force people to go to sleep instantaneously and sleep well, that would be great. A certain level for a lot of people, that's the CPAPs, I suppose, but while I probably would benefit from a CPAP, I don't know if I'd benefit that much. Okay, well, it does look to me, as I'm scrolling down Twitter, that there isn't really anything else new to talk about. And I will say, Twitter, if there's 1 or 2 people who is posting a little less on Twitter these days, I'm still not really missing it. I did notice when I tried to hover over somebody on Twitter that either because of my ad blocker or something else, the pop-up that would have shown the full description of them is not popping up anymore. So yeah, infrastructurally, we may be looking at a slow death of a website in a way that would be very informative, as most websites don't just die because people stop being employed to maintain them, as much as they die because somebody just pulls the plug and shuts it down, the server. So it might be an interesting character study, or research study, I guess would be the better phrase, of just what is the internet potentially going to look like if everybody died but the computers were still running in the long run, or most people died, or most people stopped working in a company. I feel like I'm rambling at this point. Anyways, that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and get me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.